Hey, welcome, Seth Studley to Revitalized Womanhood. How you doing?
Doing excellent. Super happy to be here. It was funny. I know that you had Melanie, my wife, on the show, and then I got the email saying, "Oh yeah, well, will you come on the show?" I'm like, "Is this supposed to go to Melanie again?" It's like Revitalized Womanhood. So I'm not a woman, and I don't have hood. So what's going on? That was kind of funny, but I'm super excited about the conversation.
I am excited because, and I know Melanie because I've heard her say this before, because I felt it after our conversation. I actually got, even from people who know me very well, felt a little bit like I was man bashing. And I'm like, that wasn't the point. You missed, and this with our very good friend, I'm like, listen, I started the entire episode with, I want this to be a 2-part series, from the men's version, from the women's version, right? So Melanie was here giving the women's version. And I know she gets a lot of grief for that, because she has to give the women's version. She has to be like basically our voice, right? When it's you two having these conversations. And I know her, and her journey right now is actually completely opposite of that. She is like really diving into the men's like psyche and the men's perspective, and really trying to empathize. Well, she can't empathize, but trying to sympathize with the male condition, So it's interesting to me that gets lost. People only hear what they want to hear, right?
Right.
And then the fact that she's actually not like that at all gets totally lost, because they just stop after they've heard something that's offended them.
Yeah, it's funny. We get often comments on iTunes reviews, and then emails and stuff and DMs like, "Hey Melanie, you're just like bashing Seth or bashing men. Like, Seth, why don't you stand up for yourself?" I'm like, in the whole context of the conversation, it's not that. It's more of a dialogue, and like it may sound like bashing men. So here's the thing. Most of the guys that send in those comments, or the women too, if they send in comments that are like snarky or critical or sarcastic, they are the ones who are doing the offense. You know what I'm saying? Just
Yes, you nailed it right there.
Here's the mirror. What Melanie and I were talking about, what she said, what I said, that may have been just a mirror put straight up to your face, and you're like, "Ooh, I don't like that. That kind of rubs me the wrong way. So I'm going to criticize it and say it's wrong, so I don't have to deal with my own stuff." And that's not okay.
Amen. Preach. Literally had this exact same conversation with Sean Villalobos 2 days ago. We were recording, and similar thing. I was asking him about the same thing, like the men's perspective, whatever. And he's like, well, when people get offended, it's, same thing. It's you just twisted into a sore spot that they have themselves, and you magnified it, right? That pain just went zink right through their body. And yeah. I think because you're so cool and I love your wife, that we just kind of jumped right into this. Why don't you introduce yourself to my listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Seth. I co-host a podcast called Anatomy of Us with my wife, Melanie, who was on your show a couple of weeks ago. We've been married for 18 years. We have 3 kids. We live outside of Seattle. And I also am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and have been practicing therapy for about, I'd say, 15 years, and recently got away from that to a degree to full-time focus on high-performance marriage coaching, speaking engagements, podcasting, and putting out content for our show. Yeah, originally I'm from South Carolina. Sometimes my accent peaks in a little bit, but I've been in Seattle for about 18 years now, so it's kind of gone away.
That's awesome. And I found you through Ryan Mickler and Trish Mickler when they were on your show. You had them on a husband-wife kind of show, and that's how I met you the first time. I reached out to you, and I will tell you, interestingly enough, it's funny because I can look back on the things that I reached out to you about my concerns with my marriage, and ever since my husband got involved with this group of men, because he's always been friends with Ryan, right? But he's never been part of the community or anything. He's been his own, like, I got this, I got my own stuff, I got whatever. But since Ryan invited him on a hunting trip last year, and so he started meeting these different men, and so I've just seen this kind of change and this improvement, and his mind is just kind of switching into these different gears of being aware of how he's showing up in our marriage even. You know what I mean? So, like, for example, this year when I started this, when Rick and Ryan came up with the whole concept of women's community hunting in Hawaii, 2 men, that's logical, right? And they came
so he
to
went to Hawaii
and,
on the pig hunt, huh? Okay, that's awesome. Sorry, I'm a hunter too.
So he's been a couple times, yes.
Okay.
Oh, you've got to get on there and see his elk, because I know you just went elk hunting for the first time, right? Just recently, weren't you?
No, not for the first time. I've done it a couple years. I didn't get anything this year, but it's not what it's about.
You were just talking about this specific hunt.
Yeah.
So anyway, they've gone and they're going back and all these things. But anyway, so they came back to me in Alaska and said, do you want to do this? And I was like, yes. Well, the point of that is that my husband, before this transformation almost, I don't necessarily know that he sees it this way, but I kind of am seeing it this way. Before this happened, it was all he was doing, and I don't want to say his idea of our life, because it was my life too. I was agreeing to it. We were communicating. We were talking about things, but it was very, I'm going to do this so that we can do this. I'm going to do this so that we can do this. I'm going to do, and that doesn't sound bad, right? Because we agreed on it. We communicated, right? But then for him to come to me and say, I think you should do this. I've been seeing that you have been looking for something more purposeful, more than just being home buried under laundry. And he says, I really think you should do this. I will support you in this. And he is now a stay-at-home dad. He is dad lifing it up. He changes diapers, takes school pickup, does all the things. He had poke bowl ready for me when I got home from work last night.
Love it.
He is doing it. He's showing up in a way and supporting me in a way that I hate to say never had before, but maybe didn't know how to before.
So what do you think was one of the main things of his transformation? Obviously, like being around other like-minded, strong, intentional men. I advocate that for every man, women too, but like dudes need to talk to dudes who are going to push and prod and hold accountable and have those conversations, right? So was that his transformation? Like, okay, stay at home dad, go for it, babe, I love you, go, you got this. What was that like for you guys?
I think it was the community. I think it was him kind of setting his own boundaries in a way of the relationships that he had in his life already that were not serving him, and him recognizing, because he's always been a self-improvement person. He's reading the books. He's doing, that was one of our biggest fights, was I would say, you put so much energy into being the best boss and being the best leader in your community or in your business, but you're kind of ignoring that you're not putting it in to be the partner. You're doing it to be the partner at work, not the partner at home, right? And this is this should be your most important partnership. But for him, his love language is providing and financial, and I'm going to give my family everything they need. So that's what that's his love language. So I think it definitely was his almost giving himself permission to set boundaries with these relationships that he had previously that were not serving him. And now so it made space. Like, we were supposed to go to Alaska earlier, and Ryan invited him on this hunt because the spot opened up, and he was like, so we actually canceled, rearranged. A lot of stuff had to happen. He was just like, babe, I think I should go. I just feel like I should go to this. And I'm like, yeah, go, have at it, whatever. And honestly, it was pivotal. I feel like allowing for men that are, in this mindset of being intentional about listening and understanding to what's going on with their spouses, being present for their children, wanting to maintain or grow their financial stability. It's those kind of conversations that are deeper and not just, I don't think anybody that's outside of communities like these cannot understand that. Like, I tell my ladies, when they sign up for the sisterhood, they leave small talk at the door. That's
Right.
it. Small talk's gone. We don't mess around with that. We don't waste time with that. We jump right into the questions that are maybe hurtful. They make you, like we said, hold the mirror in front of your face and get to the bottom of why it's hurtful, and let's figure out how to make it better. And these kind of conversations, it's really been fun for me to see that men need those. And of course, I've always seen it through Ryan's, but I didn't have the personal experience of hearing it from these wives that I now know and seeing
Right.
it in my own husband, right?
Yeah, it's really crazy, and I say this all the time on the podcast. For me, as a guy, and so I'm a therapist, I'm trained in all this stuff, and I don't know if people don't know this, but newsflash, like 7 or 8 out of 10 therapists are women, right? So in grad school, just like I was surrounded by women, right? A lot of estrogen going on, right? So I think that I have a pretty good idea of like emotions and things like that, and the benefit of therapy and community. But for some reason, and this is true for me and most of the guys that I've talked to, I would rather trudge through the snow with 200 pounds on my back, barefoot, than sometimes go to those emotional places that my wife wants me to go, or other people may want me to go. And what I heard you say about your husband is, okay, oftentimes a lot of guys go to what they know. We all go to what we know, but especially guys, okay, if I can go to the office, if I can make money, if I can do this, do stuff that I'm really good at, I'm going to tend to avoid the emotional things I'm not so good at. Maybe family of origin wise, we didn't learn these things, but that, and of course we're finding that like that doesn't serve to be a well-rounded marriage. It's like you can have all the money in the world, but if you're like 500 miles away emotionally from your wife or from your husband, then what is all that worth, kind of thing. So going back to the importance of community and like also therapy, like if, okay, you don't want to unload all your stuff on your wife or your husband, go talk to someone else who has an objective point of view at it, who is trained in it. Like that is really, really difficult work. But just like anything, working out, doing 75 hard, which I'm a big proponent of, saving money, getting out of debt, all that stuff is work. And anything worthwhile is worth working for. Right? So you have to make that switch. Maybe your husband made the switch of like, whoa, I've been missing community here. And like, my wife has all these, gifts and talents in her zone of genius. I'm going to hold off on what I've been doing for, 20 years or whatever, providing. Maybe we're in a good enough place that we can do that. All right, go, spread your wings and fly. Totally support it, right? And it seems like it's working out pretty good for you guys. So I applaud him for leaning into some of the difficult conversations that he's probably had, with Ryan and other dudes and stuff like that. And like for any guys listening, it's like lean into those conversations, just like working out. It is work, but it is always worth it. It's always worth it.
All right. So I sent the message to get you and Melanie here with homework.
Yes.
She came to me, and I hate to say, and I don't know if that's how I worded it, but I hate to say I wanted the top 5, because you have your badass husbands, men's coaching, she's got her women's group. I want to know what perfect couple to go to for the women's perspective and the men's perspective. So she came with the 5 most common, I don't want to call them complaints, but, but 5 most brought up conversations, topics that men have regarding women, wives, the women in their lives, whatever.
Yeah.
And I want to like get into your brain with this, because especially today, where I was talking to my friend about this, I left the house screaming at my husband, screaming out the door, like, leave me alone. Stop treating me like you're my dad. Like he's trying to help me, like move me along. And I'm like, you're not my dad, And then I talked to my friend. I'm like, I am supposed to be recording with Seth Studley, and he's going to be bringing these topics up, and I'm going to be in tears because it's going to be raw. But then Rick called me and he fixed it and he made it right. But
okay,
we all have those things. So I already know what one of the topics is, and I had to mentally prepare for this because I know it's coming. But I want the 5, and we're going to go over those 5, and I hope I have the questions the good questions to get the right answers for my women, for the listeners.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is good. And I did do my homework, and this is some like anecdotal stuff just from, 15 years of doing couples therapy, coaching clients. And then I also sourced my men's group, which I thought was pretty funny because it's like, okay, we're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. And so I was like, hey guys, I'm going on a show. And the host asked, to speak about the top 5 complaints, issues that we may have about women, right? Our wives. And one guy put only 5 ? Which I thought was really funny to start it out. That was the first thing, right? So you want me to just go over them and in order here? Okay.
You tell me the 5 and then let's go back and we'll dive into each one.
Okay. So I kind of have two lists, some of anecdotal stuff and then like specific questions. But
I'm just taking notes, so I'm good.
Okay, so one thing is maybe they are grumpy all the time, like tone of voice, like, okay, they always seem overwhelmed and just like, it's like having too many tabs open in your window, so that makes your computer run slow. So sometimes it can be that, and their like focus is elsewhere. Does that make sense? Like, okay, the focus is elsewhere. And I know that, moms, working moms, stay-at-home moms have a ton of stuff going on. But this is a real thing because we as husbands, I'm going to get into the kind of the emotional piece, it's like clearly we do have feelings and we want to be able to go to a, soft place to land. And if you're looking to your wife for the soft place to land, first of all, that's the right place to look. Second of all, we want it to be a soft place. Now, that doesn't mean like just all the doting, all the love, all the time. It's just like, oh, okay, I feel seen, I feel heard, and I feel listened to. Believe it or not, dudes want that too. And the guys that don't say they don't want that, in my opinion, have some work to do. So, number 1, kind of grumpy all the time, distant all the time. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I'm a woman. It makes complete sense.
Okay.
Mirror.
Okay. Mirror. Yep. Here's the mirror, right?
Mirror. Yep. I got it.
Okay. Now I'm going to go. So again, I'm going back in between to what my dude said and another list that I compiled. And here's another one. They seem to never forget when you did something wrong, bringing up everything you've done wrong in the past. So can you give me a quick insight to that? Because I have an idea of why, like Melanie may bring something up, or a wife in a coaching call may bring something up. But what, in your perspective, what does it mean when you may bring up a past hurt, something they did wrong, a mistake they made? What does that mean to you?
Well, for me, and this isn't a thing anymore. Luckily, we've gotten past it years ago, but he had a fiance before we were together. And the long story short is basically he kept being in communication with this person, even though the other girlfriends I didn't care about. The other relationships I don't care about. I'm a strong, very self-confident person. But this one, I just knew for whatever reason it needed to be stopped, right? And it didn't. And so I kept bringing it up even after it had stopped. So there, I should preface that. It had stopped, but I kept bringing it up, like using it as a defense to attack him as a weapon. And finally it came to, listen, if I can never outlive this, if I can never get past this, then we just need to call it quits now, because what am I going to do for the rest of our lives? You're going to just keep bringing this up? You can't. So that's specifically, but there's obviously hurt feelings and things more that I'm sure get brought up in fights, but that one just came to mind when you said it.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm kind of, when you asked this question, I was like, okay, I can source this. I can do some research and, anecdotally like compile stuff. But honestly, I'm kind of having a hard time with my own list that I made, because I see the other side of it. Maybe as a therapist or a coach, I see like, okay, for you, maybe bringing up the past fiance, or for like guys who have wives who are bringing up stuff in the past, I want the guys to see that there is still something there, and it doesn't mean that it's as fresh as the day it happened, or you haven't changed as a husband, or you guys haven't worked through this or gone to counseling or, all this other stuff. It just means maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe something is triggered or something, I don't know. And she just wants you to be able to take it and listen to it. So, guys, I want you to wake up and not cause an argument. Why are you saying this again? I can't believe it. And think of I want you to look at the thing below the thing below the thing. That's what we talk about all the time. Maybe Melanie mentioned it when she was on your show. Because there's always something there, and couples, if they're willing or patient or like have the insight to go, okay, I'm going to slow my brain down, hold on, put on the brakes. What's the thing below the thing? They could get out of arguments in like 2 seconds, because really maybe the wife is just yelling, hey, I just want to be seen, heard, and loved right now. That's all. I'm not saying you're the worst husband ever, that you were an idiot for doing that or whatever. Just want to be seen, heard, and loved. So if I, as a husband, can have all my stuff together and respond, not react, but respond to that, it can be so much better. Now, to the wives listening, if you do find yourself bringing things up over and over and over and perseverating on a thing that he has since apologized for, since corrected, stopped whatever behavior it was, then I'm going to hold that mirror up to you, ladies, and go, why are you doing this? Maybe you need to go process this with a therapist or a coach or other ladies in the sisterhood or women's group coaching, because that's not okay either, And sometimes, and here's the other complaint, maybe number 2, the persistent nagging and always asking their husband to do something, right? Sometimes husbands don't feel like they can have their own time. Sometimes wives, women go, oh, well, he's tough, he's strong, he can take it. In fact, that is one thing that Melanie and I have had to work through. And she said this on our show before. Her dad is very, very stoic, gets stuff done, just goes all the time. And so she was expecting me to be similar to that. Okay, have no feelings, be a workhorse, just a diesel truck that always goes and never turns off, right? And I'm like, well, hold up. That really doesn't work. So we had to work through what her expectations were of me compared to her dad, right? So that's something that I couldn't change that. I'm like, hey, I can't say anything or do anything to change your perception of your own dad. But what I can do is hey, this works for me, this works for us, and agree to that, if that makes sense. So going back to the constant nagging or persistent nagging, I'm even thinking of the Bible verse, what is it? It's funny, me and Melanie make a joke. It's we know basically every Bible verse, but don't know where it is or the name of it. It's just that quote, it's from the Bible, I'm sure, but I have no idea of where, was
just
it Genesis
or
I know. It was, what is it? It was in Proverbs, I know that, but something about a nagging wife is it's better to live on the corner of a roof or the dripping faucet kind of thing, just a persistent thing. So wives, put your husbands to work, hold them accountable, but also know that they're not super people that don't have emotions as well. And sometimes constant nagging and complaining is really draining. Complaining is draining, right? So that's number 2. Okay.
Well, and let me take a little right-hand turn with that. As far as the nagging and the constant, I had a woman, and I bring this up all the time because it was just a lightning bolt hit me, and I was like, that was so amazing. She's got anxiety, and so her therapist has told her about the brain dump and a notepad, and that's going to be beneficial for you. Just get the stuff out of your brain, right? And oh man, I just thought of 2 things. But so she told us in our group that she just started with that brain dump that she's always done. She started leaving it in the center of the kitchen table. Not for any reason. She said, I didn't do it the first time for any reason, but then it kind of became it was happening and this was happening. And her husband started doing the things on the list. She was just putting down, I need to change the laundry out. I need to do this, or I need to do this, or go to this, or whatever. And she said, he just started checking things off her list. And she was like, and I thought, they're not mind readers. Right? And so for us to be, for me, I kind of think of it when our house is cluttered, it makes me just want to suffocate, right? I'm just like,
Yeah.
the walls are closing in. But Rick could care less. Like, he doesn't care. He's of the, why would I make my bed? I'm just going to sleep in it again. Why would I pick up the baby's toys? He's literally going to pull them out again tomorrow. Like, that's his way of thinking. So for him, the fact that it bothers me is just like, so why? Why does it? So the fact that I actually, because we're starting to be more intentional about explaining these things, I had to help him understand why that was a bother for me, why it was a trigger. And it was like, oh, okay, so this doesn't bother me, but it bothers her. So now instead of nagging or coming home and rage cleaning, instead of being happy when I get home because I get there and it's like, last night I got home and the toys were all picked up, the dishes were done, and he had Poke Bowl waiting for me. And I was just like, I'm so happy. Let's go have lovey time because I'm so happy. Right? Hello. The difference between me coming home, looking around, not even saying a word, instantly just going into rage cleaning mode versus I come home and he gets rewarded with lovey time because I was like, oh, I am in such a better place now. I just got home from having like a super busy day and I walked in and it was like, instead of, right?
Yeah. That was your soft place to land, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, okay, come to the house, there's food, stuff is clean. There could be 5 million other things on your mind, but since those were taken care of, it's like those things didn't even enter your mind. It's like you closed all your tabs on your computer and like, rest time, chill time, which is great. So, I'm really glad that you said mind reader because that was another complaint. Maybe we can, if we're numbering, it's like that's number 3.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys in the group said, I'm not a mind reader. I try to do the best that I can. But then when I don't, air quotes, read her mind, boom, an argument happens. And we have become fairly good at this because obviously it was an issue in our own marriage. Like, okay, Melanie cannot read my mind. I cannot read hers. Why don't we let each other know what our expectations are, what our desires are, and what we can and can't do? Right? Just like your lady that had the notepad on the kitchen table or something like that. That is genius, and it's really cool because it sounded like that she didn't put it on the table for him to read and was going to like be weird and sulk, oh, I can't believe he didn't even read this. He probably read this and he's just ignoring me, Sometimes we go there and we think that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, so, kudos to the husband to be like, all right, here's basically a list of what I can do. And sometimes, and again, I have a more difficult time with this than Melanie, but sometimes all we have to do is say, I want this. When you come home, or when I come home, can you please pick up the kid toys or whatever? Can you please have the dish, the sink empty of dishes or whatever? And it's those little things that, your husband. So here's the thing too. I don't necessarily care about what Melanie cares about. She loves Indiana Jones. I think Indiana Jones is cool and it's fun, but she loves Indiana Jones. And we also raise Australian Shepherds at the house. She loves Aussies, loves them to death, wants a 1,000, kennel puppy farm kind of thing. Now, is it my dream or my zone of genius to have like 1,000 puppies running around and, I don't know, dog food everywhere? No, absolutely not. I like hunting. I like, 75 hard or, working out or doing other sports and stuff. But since she likes it, I can show love to her by not, I don't have to go, okay, now that's my world too. But I'm like, you know what? I love you. And this is mutual respect. I am going to do what I can to build a dog fence or, drive 100 miles to pick up a new puppy or something because that's in the plan. This one's special or whatnot. And how do you think she feels when I do stuff like that for her? Now,
Seen.
She feels seen. She feels like $1 million. Now, had she not told me, I may be thinking like, okay, sure, we can get a dog. That's cool. And then just don't do anything with it, right? But since she was telling me and very explicit in that, I'm like, okay, that is something that I can do for her to make her feel seen, heard, loved, listened to, respected. So as a good husband or a good wife, if your spouse goes, here's a list, here's 3 things that make me feel all these things. A good husband, a good wife would go, all right, I want to do those. In fact, I'm happy to do those, right? So ladies, if this just kind of to allow you into the men's brain, most guys, and I say this all the time, most husbands want to do the best they can with what they have when they have it, right? I think all people in general, unless you're a sociopath, you don't think that way, but most people, right? So if a husband doesn't have to be perfect, but if a husband knows, man, my wife has told me this more than once, it must be important. Listen to that, right? And same things with wives. If your husband says, hey, I really like it when we get in bed together, or at the same time, like some couples go to bed at different times or whatnot. Or I really like it when I come home, you look up from what you're doing, no matter what it is, just for 2 seconds and go, I see you, glad you're home. Or you don't have to say that, but just that look, it's like, okay, I'm here. That's really important. So wives, listen to that, because believe it or not, dudes have emotions too. And that may be a good segue into the 4th thing that one of my guys said, and this is really
because I'm coming back to this one. I made notes specifically for that one.
Okay, so this is more of like a it's a sentence. Like I didn't get this just random off the internet. This is like, okay, from the dudes, from the men's group, and I'm just going to read it verbatim here.
Cool.
My guy says, I'll add another one that is kind of hard to articulate, but hopefully makes sense. When they say, our wives, when they say they want emotional vulnerability, empathy, and sharing of the feelings and all that other touchy-feely stuff, then act like a raging B word and wonder why they don't get the emotional connection they're looking for. They want us to have feelings, but treat us like we don't have any. And I think this is really, really powerful, because that goes back to like the emotionality of guys in general, right? We're not just like, soaking
robots.
Wet mops of robots, or like a puddle of, just like fall apartness emotions on the floor. Like, we're strong. We want to get stuff done. We are mostly family oriented. I want to serve my wife in the best way that I can, right? And sometimes, we may focus too much on that. Like, okay, I'm spending a zillion hours at the office. I'm like, well, I have to pay for our lifestyle and all this. And we focus too much on that. And it's really difficult. Ladies, know that it is actually difficult. Like I said before, I'd rather trudge through the snow with a 200-pound backpack barefoot than sometimes talk about these emotional things with my wife. It's just easier to go to work or cut the grass or get other stuff done. It's like, yep, I know that I can do that. This other stuff, I'm not so sure of the outcome, so I'm going to go to what I know, right? So that piece of women oftentimes desire, they want that emotional connection, right? For Melanie, forever, she used to ask me, hey, what are you thinking? It was funny, we talked about that in the men's group last night. And that was like one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. She would say, hey, what are you thinking? I'm like, if I could articulate what I'm actually thinking right now and how I got to that like spaghetti noodle thing, it would take 1,000 years, and then I wouldn't even know what we're talking about, right? So sometimes I don't know what I'm thinking. But what she was asking was like, hey, I want to know emotionally where you're at. What are you thinking? What do you think about our marriage? What do you think about our kids and all this stuff? So sometimes that is very hard to articulate, especially if we're not used to talking about feelings, guys not used to talking about feelings in that way. And there have been other times when, maybe there's been like super stress at work or the kids or whatever, or finances or this or building a business, all this stuff. And she's like, oh, wait a minute, something's wrong. And then I can like let out all the stuff that I've been bottling up. And this just isn't me. This is other guys too. And then maybe it's too much for Melanie or too much for the other wives. And they go, whoa, that literally was too much. And so what are the guys left thinking? They're like, all right, where's that cap? I'm going to super glue it this time. and never let it out again. I mean, of course, it comes out in other ways, which we could get into the psychology of it, but that's not healthy either. So sometimes guys are left very, very confused. They're like, I thought you wanted to know what I was thinking. I thought you wanted my emotional closeness or rawness or vulnerability. And then I finally got up the courage to talk about these things, and you're maybe like critical of it or sarcastic about it. That is a big blow to a guy's like psyche. Ladies, believe it or not, it is. It's like, we're strong, and we can continue to be strong. That's totally fine. We're built for it, right? But on stuff like that, it's like that is almost one of, in my opinion, and from other guys I've had experience with, in my opinion, that is like one of the most damaging things. And that not only hurts your husband, that also hurts you, because that's how you feel close as well. Like you want, or ladies, women in general, especially Melanie, they want that emotional closeness. But if they say something to be like, the guy's like, okay, I'm not going down that road again. I know what happened. It's like, no way, Jose. So really, really think about that, ladies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I actually, for me, my topic in my newsletter, or my Friday episode even, was about defensiveness. And it's maybe from a woman's perspective, I'm trying to tell you that I have needs that need to be met, and all you're hearing is, I do everything wrong. I'm the worst. And I'm like, I'm not saying that. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you or telling you or trying to articulate that there's a need not being met, right? On the other side of it, what you're kind of saying is this women saying, oh, open up to me. I want you to be vulnerable. I want to see that side of you, whatever. And then when they do, and they word vomit all over them, that's the woman reacting that way. I just thought it's the defensive. It's like, why? Mm-hmm. A woman that can't take that, especially if she asked for it, if she can't take that, what's her drama that she's got going on, that she just put up a big old shield and was like, defense, you're telling me all this stuff, and she's internalizing that and making it all her problem, when he's just saying, this is just how I feel. This is just stuff. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. That's where I went with that. That's what that made me think about.
Yeah. And maybe sometimes it is, I mean, I guess I don't know why, but the analogy of like holding the mirror, maybe some of the things that I were thinking and feeling and some emotions that I had around it, and actually, told Melanie about that's holding up a mirror to what maybe she thought she was doing and where that wasn't like fulfilling a need that I had, and it makes me think about love languages. And of course, love languages are fine, and that is definitely not the end all be all. But oftentimes we as a spouse can think that we are loving our partner, our spouse correctly, but what we're actually doing is loving them in our preferred love language. Mine, with a lot of guys, no surprise, is physical touch and like words of affirmation. So if I'm just like touching on Melanie, all this stuff, oh, she feels loved. Her love cup is getting filled. And she's like, no, that's not working. It's not even my love language. In fact, it's sometimes annoying kind of thing, right? So, but me, here I am thinking like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. So that's holding up a mirror saying, oh, basically what you thought you were doing, you're not doing, and I don't like it. And that goes both ways. So women also have that in mind and just really be intentional. It's like, hey, husband, how do you feel love from me the most? And if dudes can't say that, then the guys have some work to do. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I've never thought of that before. I thought this was supposed to come naturally. This is weird, so I don't know. Don't ask me that. Well, you may not end up getting what you want or need from your partner, And in fact, you may be robbing her, and this goes to guys too, robbing him of like I like serving my wife. I like doing things for her, right? It feels good. So if I don't ask her what feels good to her, and I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about like emotionally, like around the house or this, or how does she like to be taken care of? If I'm not asking her that and she's not telling me, then like we're both missing out, right? She's not getting it. I'm not getting the joy of doing it or helping her. And then and a lot of couples feel that way, but that could be remedied by just a couple of easy conversations.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And that can't be I was going to say, that can't be the end of the list because it hasn't come up yet.
There's one more that, I have more than 5, so we can add to the list.
We can do this all
if
day.
You want to. Yeah, honestly, we could. I mean, like I posed this question to the group and just like boom, boom, boom. It was like populated so quick of like this and this, and it wasn't just like a complaint session. I hate my wife. She's so stupid, because that's not allowed in like the types of groups that we run. We're like, okay, we're not here just to like complain. We're here to process and talk about stuff and then like get good feedback on it. So none of this is like complaining or just like wife bashing in any sense. So, okay. And here is another one. And this one like came in from a couple of dudes. So I'll try to like summarize it. And basically it's like, okay, I'm just reading through it. Okay. This is about like sometimes highly emotionally charged reactions and over the top behavior, and how we may be expected as guys just to like take it all. Like, okay, my wife's yelling for the 7th night in a row. What's going on? And I can't, it's not appropriate to like scream at the top of my lungs back, because if I do, that would just cause more of a problem. But a lot of the guys have frustration around, wait a minute, if I treated my wife this way, the same way that she is treating me, like the script would be flipped so quick and I would be just the worst husband ever. I would be emotionally abusive. I would be crazy. I would be overreactive and just, I'd be a terrible husband, right? So a lot of the guys have real frustration around that. I mean, one of the guys, in fact, said, I know that if I acted a fraction of that same way, like name calling, over the top reactions, then she would leave him like that. But he is in that same position, and if he left, then it would be like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you throwing all this away? The kids and this and this. Does that make sense? So some real frustration around, okay, hold on. If I said all that stuff or acted all this way, she would just lose her mind and blame me for everything. So there is, I think, an expectation, kind of like I said when I talked about in the early years, Melanie had this expectation of me, which we hadn't really talked about, of taking it all, okay, just sit here, grin and bear it. But if I acted to you in kind, it would be over. It would just be like, all right, done. Like, you know what I'm saying? So there's a real frustration
know what you're saying
around that. Yeah. And
I can't relate because I'm not the one with hypercharged. I think once I get to that point, he's seen it, but he's the one that's got like a temper, an instant reaction, knee-jerk reaction. He's got that. So for me, I can see it from the other side, but being a woman, having been raised and whatever around so many women, I get that. And that is straight up abuse. It is. And for a man to take it and take it and take it is not fair. And so that my question was, and what it will be back with all of these is, what do you tell them with that? Because you can't, all you can do is in the kindest way you can, hope they're not going to get defensive and jump down your throat, but in the kindest way you can say, hey, well, and first of all, he has to be strong enough in his own masculinity to be able to say this. Hey, you doing this hurts me, right? Just like a woman, I could go to my husband and say, hey, that hurts me. And that's no one would think anything about that. But for a man to say to his wife, that really hurts me, that's a big thing. So you have to, like we go back to, she has to be willing to accept and hear that. He has to be willing to say it. She has to be willing to accept and hear it. So this is going to get me to, we're going to come back full circle to all of these at the end with my one biggest question I have, but I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I think in that last topic that we were talking about, so I do want to put some ownership to the guys, right? It's like, okay, well, you have to know what boundaries you want, right? Like where is the line for you? And there's this great saying, we what is it? It's not a Bible verse, so it's not that. We endure what we allow.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So if this doesn't happen, but if Melanie was just, just yelling at me all the time, like all this stuff, and I continue to allow it, now she knows it's okay to treat me that way, right? So then I must endure it. So the guys in this situation, and women too, anybody basically, but particularly the guys in this situation, you have to go, wait a minute, this isn't okay. Go read No More Mr. Nice Guy or other books that like can help you and empower you to be like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to take this. And there is a different path through intentionality and communication and openness and all that stuff. But I don't want guys or women listening to this and go, oh, wait a minute, I just have to take it and take it and take it, and I can't do anything. And then you're just like, more pissed off over and over and over. And then resentment and contempt comes in, which is ugly. But say, hey, okay, what have I been allowing? What have I been enduring because I have allowed certain things? And you can overlay that to any relationship with your kids, with your boss, with whoever, your parents, your family of origin, and then be willing to go, okay, I'm not going to allow this anymore. Here are my boundaries. Here is the line here. And here's the contingency plan. Hey, if you do this in an argument, I will set a timer, 30 minutes. I'm not like leaving out in a mad rush and abandoning you or anything. We call that the pursuer-distancer dynamic, which we don't want to get into. But this is something that I agreed to myself that I'm not going to allow anymore. It doesn't work, so I'm not going to allow it. Therefore, eventually, I'm not going to have to endure it and just kind of hate life. Because some of these guys that I've talked to are like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Like, she's just so emotional and so crazy. I can't do anything. And then we feel like neutered in that. And then, oh man, now when you feel emasculated, that is really bad territory. Because then you're just like, okay, I really don't care. Because this has been happening over and over and over. So ladies, even if you have done one thing of this, ask your husband about it. Like, be open to have conversations. And hopefully you can have a soft enough heart to go, oh, am I really doing that? Or is he just making this up? And ladies, trust me, if a guy like gets to talking about this emotional stuff, I promise you, he is not overreacting and he is not just making this stuff up. It has been on his mind for years, decades even, perhaps. And if he gets to that point where he's open to talk about it, like, this sounds maybe not masculine at all, but like, treat that with the utmost care. Because there have been times when, like, again, it's hard to do emotional stuff for dudes, right? It's really hard. And when we get to that point, Melanie has said something that just like sweeps my feet out from under me, not in a good way, just like crushes me. And I'm like, literally, and this wasn't said out of anger or anything, it's like, literally, you have no idea what you just did kind of thing. Like, oh, that was a cut. Oh, man, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, that happens, right? So we can still repair and like move forward from that. But ladies, treat that with respect, because ultimately that's what you desire, that emotional connection with your person, in all ways to be, we talk about like biopsychosocial spiritual aspect. It's like you want to be all of those. You want to be 100% all of those with your person, right? Well, guess what? Guys want that too. We may not know how to get there, but ladies, know that guys desire that and want that. And for them to be open to that and brave enough, even that sounds like weird or whatnot, but that's the only word I can think of, to be open to that, that is a very masculine thing to do, because you're like, okay, this is hard, I'm going to go for it anyway, because this is what we do. We persevere, we go, and we're doing it, kind of thing. So just respect that, ladies.
I'm going to come back to that one, because I would not put up with that kind of behavior in my women's group. If I knew that a woman was doing this, that to me, first of all, I'm going to say, what are your hormones doing?
Right.
Why are they all over the place? And then you go back to your what's beneath. It's like you are flying off the handle because you're so overwhelmed and you haven't been doing your beliefs. We call them our core categories. One of them's beliefs. You haven't been focusing enough on your wellness, your mental, spiritual, emotional wellness to be releasing that pressure valve, right? So that's what's happening is now she's just exploding, right?
Right. Oof. Yeah. So what does that look like? And this is literally a question to the wives out there. What does that equilibrium look like for you, right? In my men's group, which it's a little different in the women's group, but we talk about 5 main categories: body, bank, beliefs, board, and brain. And I don't need to go into those, but that's basically like all the things that make up us as people, right? And I know for a fact that if I have set goals in those 5 categories and I'm actively working on them, then I'm going to show up better for myself, first of all, for Melanie, for our kids, for our business, for our community, for the family, right? So ladies, ask yourself, okay, what's off here? And coincidentally, a lot of those questions that I got around this kind of erratic and emotional behavior was centered around hormones and PMS and stuff like that. And I know that some women, are way up here, and some are like, yeah, whatever, it's kind of annoying, but not a big deal. I don't fly off the handle. So if that is a thing and it's been a persistent occurrence in your relationship, take a look at it. Maybe they're out of whack. Maybe, you need to run more, or I don't know, drink more water or something. I don't know, dial your diet in.
That's the answer to everything over here is drink more water. That's my answer to everything. Yeah. Drink more water. It's like, have you ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding where the dad's like, put it in Windex. He's sitting there with his elbow in a bowl of Windex. And I'm like, just drink more water. It'll be fine. Just drink more water. That's something she needs to check in on herself. Is where are you at on the scale of things? But and that brings up too, because a man with low testosterone, what is he instantly going to do? A man that has a problem, like let's say on the other hand, that he's not, feeling as great as he could in their marriage. What's she going to instantly tell him to do? Go to the doctor.
Get checked.
To the doctor. Yeah. Do you need help with something? Do you need a pill for that? Do you need steroids? Do you need, we've talked about this. We've had people on for balancing your hormones. And so why is it not okay for him to say to her, hey, this has been happening so often for so long, whatever. There's obviously something we need to do about this. It shouldn't be, your hope, just like I would hope if I went to Rick with something like that, he wouldn't be offended. He would know that it's coming from a place of love, right? I love my husband. I'm not saying it to be like, right? So you would hope that she would be able to be receptive of that as well. Ladies.
Yeah. That's the hope, ladies. If you're not, take a look at it and be willing to adjust or change and even take accountability and ownership of that, right? And I want to go to one which I feel we can't ignore. It's talking about sexual intimacy.
There it is.
I'll just read it here. Let's see. She shuts down his advances, and another guy was talking about sometimes guys, so in my experience, and this isn't, across the board 100%, of course, but in my experience with coaching, with therapy and stuff like that, guys have typically been the higher desire partner, right? And it's been said that guys need to have that physical intimacy to feel connected, okay. And that sounds so weird. It sounds kind of crass. It's like, hey, let's have sex, then I can talk, and share my emotions. But again, men are more complex than that. It's not just like, oh, he's a perv, gross, he just wants to have sex, and then he'll talk to me. Okay, that seems weird. But it's like, it's true. And a lot of guys have been made to feel ashamed of that, So what if, and I'll really ask the ladies this. So most guys, I don't care if I'm stereotyping or whatever, just bear with me. Most guys, the most important way that they feel love, that they can receive love and show love and feel emotionally, spiritually, biologically connected is through what? Sex.
Sex.
Right? Sex. So, if I flip this around and said, hey, Melanie, you know how you just desire to talk to me and to know my heart and like want to just, get inside my brain and just, you know that like that desire that you have, that you just want to talk about your day, you want to emotionally connect, you just want to be listened to. You know how strong that is for you? That is kind of messed up. Who would want to like talk every day? Who would want to be like, I don't know, that's just weird. Like you got something going on over there, right? So would I ever in a million years shame her or say that is messed up? No, I wouldn't. But oftentimes women, and sometimes culture too, goes, oh, that dude is just I don't know. That's just gross. I can't do that. I don't know. He's too unreasonable. But it's like, if you really look at the thing below the thing, it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is how I feel most connection. Let's connect. Right? I don't blame or shame or get mad at Melanie for wanting to talk to me, and it's not like, have sex 5 times a day or something crazy or anything like that, because most guys are not like that. But like with some regularity, it's like, that just feels, it's like a reset, it's like, maybe the same way that you felt after you came home. I think it was yesterday you said, and there was a poke bowl there. The kitchen was clean. It's like, that was a reset. That just felt good to you. Like, okay, no stress. I can think. I'm myself. That's how a lot of guys feel like when they're physically intimate with their wife. They're like, oh, reset. I can think. And it's not just, I don't know. And again, guys, if you're listening, that doesn't give you liberty to like, well, if we just had sex, then I'd be a better person and this and this. No, that's lame. I'm not saying that. I'm wanting to normalize the emotional connection that guys desire through sex, right? Is just like the emotional connection that Melanie or other women desire through talking, through spending time, through knowing, the heart of her husband. There's no different. It's no different. So that's a really big thing. A lot of the guys are like, I wish my wife knew how important it was. And it's not some like, plea for sex or something, like begging for scraps or anything like that. It's like a genuine, like, this is very important to me. Just like maybe spirituality is very important to me, or providing for my family or loving my kids is important to me. This is important to me. So don't make fun of it. Like, respect it. Now if your husband is doing stupid stuff, then like, okay, he's got to, get his game together, go join Ryan Mickler's group or like other mastermind groups to have other men to help you with that. But yeah, ladies, that's a big one, and definitely couldn't go without talking about that one.
No, I knew it was coming. It's a hot topic always for not just my husband and myself as far as this is in our relationship, but it's because we are having these deeper conversations with men from that community, Order of Man, and from women in my community. We're having these conversations. So it does become a hot topic. It does become something that I bounce ideas off him and he bounces ideas off me. But I want to stop right here and just let you know, my listeners, go listen to the anatomy of marriage, right? Because we've got an anatomy of us,
yeah.
Of us, right? Mm-hmm. But then you've got anatomy of sex. That your Patreon only? Explain that.
Yeah, that's Patreon. We do an episode a week, one free one every month. But then if you subscribe to Patreon, it's $6.90. Go over there and get another episode. But we're currently gonna restructure some things to give couples and listeners more access to what we do, more resources, and we're really meaning to build a different, we have a community already, but just to upgrade the community of like, okay, resources. We're all in this together. We want marriages to thrive. We want individuals to thrive, because you have to be a healthy individual first before you have a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
Right?
Amen.
And then, of course, what's next after that? A healthy family. So you got to get right to be right in all ways.
So what I was saying with that is I know you guys because I have been on this journey with you, whether you know it or not. And so I am not a prude in any way, but I'm also, there's a time and a place for conversations. So I'm telling you ladies that it's not crass. It is something that needs to be discussed, and they do it in such a good way that it's like, oh, so the reason I was bringing that up is you were just explaining, because you were on the elk hunt, you two were talking about this animal needs water, right? And the other lady deers aren't like, ew, you are gross for needing water. Right? It's a natural animal instinct to procreate, that's what it is. It's there for a reason. And of course, women, if we're like getting out of our own heads and getting out of our own ways, we love that too, right? We love that connection. From a woman's perspective, you guys also had the other opposite conversation of Melanie talking about, sometimes I do just do it for you. Right? I mean, and that's not bad. I'm doing it. I'm not doing it. It's not a pity. I'm not doing it out of pity. I love the connection. Women love the connection just as the connection, just as I'm here with you and we're sharing something, right? Men, it's more of a physical, but gets into the emotional. But women, it's like, I can be here. I can just be here for you. That's fine. But where is it going with that? But for the men, it doesn't have to be something that I was going somewhere with that. So I think it gets really blurred and hard for if I have to stand up for my sex. And because I'm actually there right now, I actually have a 2-year-old who is still nursing, almost done. But, I'm still in the young baby phase. I'm still in the chaos phase. I'm still in the I'm touched out phase. And so it's not even the fact that And I have had my hormones balanced, ladies, and I don't know why it said I was okay, because I am not. But I am at that place where just because my mind doesn't think like that, right? And so he has had to communicate to me that hurts my feelings, that you don't even think about it. So I know that I have to be intentional. Right now, in this phase of life, in this season, I have to be intentional about maybe making myself little notes, maybe making myself little reminders, or like snapping my wrist or doing something that triggers a memory or a thought for me to think, he needs this. This is a need. He has told me he needs this. So how can I come off and be this woman that's like, I'm telling you all this stuff that I need. I need you to pick up the toys. I need you to clean the dishes. I need, I'm telling you, these are my needs. And then he's not doing them, right? That's the same as him saying, Gina, this is a need, and you're not meeting that need. So I have to take the responsibility as his wife, as someone who loves him and wants to take care of him, to leave little notes for myself to remind me to think about it, right?
Yeah. And that's awesome. I absolutely love that you do that, because not only does it say, well, it says a bunch of things. It's like, okay, I'm in this relationship, and I will do what I can to serve my husband, to help my husband, to love my husband, to make the bigger picture thing work. Just like your husband thinks, you know what, I will do all this stuff that typically I don't think about, like clean dishes or whatever it is. But I know that helps her, and she loves it, and she feels loved and seen and heard by that. So I'm going to make a note to do that. Like I have lists of stuff like, okay, Melanie has said this, and it might be as little as remember to take the trash down or something like that. Now, she's not constantly reminding me to do that. It's just like in our system of stuff we do. Yeah, I take care of that. It's one less thing that she has to think of. And there's a million things like that she does, a million things like that I do. And what I was going to say something else around that too. Kind of going back to, and this is weird because sometimes we get questions of, maybe from a husband of like, my wife never wants to have sex or this or this. I go straight to the asking the husband, okay, what are you doing? What are your routines? What's your intentionality? What's your accountability? Maybe you're a jerk. It's like, yeah, no wonder. You talk crap to her all the time and put her down. Yeah, no wonder. So sometimes, guys and women too, like hear advice or things that we say and weaponize that. See, Melanie does it, or whatnot. Why can't you? I'm like, well, you're a loser, and, you walk around Walmart at 2 p.m. with pajamas on. Who would want to sleep with that? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, I ask the husbands, what are they doing in that? And of course, we both, like I was saying before, I want to do anything and everything I can to serve Melanie. There's a part of me that loves that. I'm like, oh, she liked that. That was good. And it's not like, I'm a little kid getting a pat on the head or anything. It's like, oh, wait a minute. That's part of my duty. That is my job description. Take care of this, take care of that. Make sure this is, running and stuff like that. And also paying attention to the little things. And that feels good. And so if, when I hear Melanie saying, oh yeah, that feels good to do that for Seth, because that just feels good. Sometimes that's hard for me to think because I don't know, whatever, culture says about sex and stuff like that. I'm like, no, it's not pity sex or anything like that. It's like, oh, this is what we do for each other and it works well. And I think if more couples could think about it that way, they would be happier. And because they're happier, they would feel more connected and it just grows exponentially from there.
Yeah. It's like a plume. It's like anything with our beliefs, like you say, you've got your 5, we've got our 4 over here in our groups. And it's, if you're working on the one, if you don't think about it, I think this when I tell my ladies to do their visions, it's like, don't think so hard about it. Don't overthink it. It's obviously there was something nudging you. There was an intuition. There was something that you just think, oh, it's missing, right? Mm-hmm. Work on that. Let's work on that. Focus on that. Stop focusing on all these other things. Focus on that one thing. Because obviously that's something that's triggering everything else. It's like the ripple effect, right? So because you're focusing, you need to focus on this one thing. And once that one thing gets better, there's no possible way that once this thing gets better, it's going to make you happier. It's going to make this better. It's going to make your marriage better. It's going to make you not yell at your kids. It's going to make you more organized. It's going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger and affect all the rest of the parts of your life. So absolutely, if you find that nucleus is your relationship and your connection with your husband, maybe you having sex more will be the pebble in the pond that creates more communication, funner date nights, more willingness to do chores for each other, more, you get rid of resentment, because he's been resenting you for not doing it, right? So maybe in doing this, you're getting rid of the fights you've been having about other things. What's underneath. So.
Right.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You talk about resentment, and this may sound weird, like some dude talking to ladies and telling them what to do, but that's not it at all. It's like, okay, ladies, if you can do that and show up fully without resentment, without like, okay, whatever, let's just go kind of thing, that causes such a positive ripple effect. And dudes too, like, okay, Melanie has asked me to do certain things. I can go, okay, fine, I'll take out the trash, and I'm dragging the trash bag, across the kitchen floor out to the garage or something like that. Like, just doing it half-heartedly, how do you think that's going to feel to her? It's like, no, if you're going to do it, show up. In fact, Melanie has this phrase where she doesn't have bad sex. I'm like, okay, what are you saying? What are you saying, first of all? And then we dug into it. She's like, if I'm going to do something, anything, eat a meal, cut the grass, produce a podcast, I'm going to do it to this level. Okay, so am I going to, if we're going to have sex, I'm going to show up for it and enjoy it just as much as you are. Be present and feel all the feels and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, that's really powerful. So wives, if you can harness that energy and show up for it, I promise you it'll make everything better. And that's just not including sex either, right? And same, dudes listening is like, hey, show up for your wife. Don't about cussed, but don't just like half-heartedly show up fully. And then your wife will see that and go, okay, that was different. Interesting. And then, oh, guess what, guys? She might be more willing to share herself with you. It's all related. It's all correlated, right? Everything's connected.
It's like the notebook on the table. She's got all of these things going on in her brain, just like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. And if you're helping those things get done, whether it's emotionally, connection for her, maybe whatever fills her cup, whatever it is that you can do to take stress, anxiety, whatever. I get that men are at work all day and they come home. But guess what? You still need to be present with the kids. You still need to be a father. You still need to be a husband. Okay. Yes, you are a businessman too, but you made a commitment when you married this woman to be a husband, and now you have kids, a father. So that doesn't stop just because you went to work all day and then you come home and you get to sit on the couch now and watch TV and she's still like trudging along from sunup to sundown. No, this is a partnership. You made a commitment. So I'm telling you this. I'm not like being this lady, but I don't really have men listeners. I don't think so. It's okay. All the women are like, yay. But the same as what I'm saying for women to think about it that way. But if men think about it that way, what are they doing? What did I say? I explained to you that Rick did these things that make me happy. And it made me think, hey, come on. It put me into the place where I could think that way. I didn't need a reminder. It automatically did it. I actually asked him this the other day. This is a funny thing. I was explaining this to him. I said, what was the context? Okay, that's what it was. I was trying to explain to him that him doing these things for me makes me want to have sexy time, right? But I'm like, there's got to be something for you. What is it that I can help fill your cup that's not a physical thing though? And he could not tell me. He could not articulate it. I'm like, do you need for me, I think if I think of what I'm asking him, I would think he needs a pat on the back. He needs the words of affirmation a lot.
Right.
But he didn't say that. And so that's me putting what I think on him. And it was interesting that he could not articulate something. I'm like, if these actions fill my cup and translate to physical intimacy for me, what translate to filling your cup without physical intimacy? That's a good question for your group. I would love to hear that. I was super curious about it.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And it makes, and you said, what I assumed was like a pat on the back or like words of affirmation. And that was also one of the complaints that we didn't go over. It's like sharing of gratitude. Now, the practice of gratitude, that's across the board. There's research. It makes you feel better. If sometimes when my feet hit the floor, like right foot, then left foot, I say, thank you. Right? As soon as I wake up, early in the morning, thank you. And that's, thanking God for, hey, I woke up, I was on the wake up list. Thank you that Melanie's there. Thank you that our kids are warm and safe in our beds. So practicing gratitude, right? And guys, again, in my experience, and this is really important to me, it's just how the culture that I grew up in the South, there's hospitality. Everybody's very polite, at least to your face. But the gratitude, I know, exactly. You've been to the South. The gratitude piece goes a really long way. Like, hey, I see what you're doing. I see your efforts or whatnot. Even if they're small, it's like, okay, there is no effort, but at least you may be able to find something that your husband is doing, right? And again, it doesn't sound like this was the case for Rick, but for a lot of guys that I talked to, me included, that appreciation of showing up. Because a lot of what guys think is like, okay, I'm going to be different from my dad. I'm going to be different from my family of origin, right? And then they show up differently in their current family with their wife and kids. And it's like this weird thing. It's like, oh, if you only knew how I grew up and if you knew what I'm not doing, you would be more thankful. I'm not drinking every single night, alcoholic coming home or whatever. I'm not cheating. I'm not, a deadbeat dad. I'm not all this stuff. That can be, that gratitude is a powerful thing. Hey, honey, I appreciate you working. I appreciate you taking care of our kids. When you, took so-and-so to ball game this weekend. Thank you for that. So the expression of gratitude, showing that you appreciate your husband, because believe it or not, no matter what type of situation you're in, somebody has it worse than you, somebody has it better than you, and you can always be thankful for something. You know, hey, I'm thankful. I know I've been crazy. I'm thankful that you've stuck it out with me. We're not in the best place now, but I'm thankful that we're here, and I'm looking forward to repairing and moving forward, right? So Gratitude, that's the big thing for dudes too.
I agree. Hang on, I'm going to break us for 1 second and stop this recording real quick because there you are. You're back. Never mind. I don't need to break. Yay. I don't even know how to go back through these. I have very specific questions. So we've got, ladies, you're grumpy all the time, distant, that is a big one for me. Rick brings it up. I joke with my ladies, with my group, that if resting bitch face was a tone of voice, I have it. Mm-hmm. I have it. It's been a constant fight in our marriage. He'll be like, you just have this tone. It's just super bitchy. And I'm like, it's just my voice. I don't know how else.
Yeah, or it's just my facial expression.
Yeah. It's just, I'm still talking this way, but so for me, it's been a hard thing. But also I think we get so serious about our to-do lists, women. I think we just get so zoned in on, because I'm definitely, I don't know what it is. My complaint with me is I'm not the fun parent. I'm not fun at all, at all. Mm-hmm. However, when they're babies and when they're like, I have a 2-year-old, when they're babies till they're maybe, I guess, out of my bed, because they're still in my bed, I'm just like, oh, I love you. I love you. I can roll on the floor with them. I can tickle them. I can play with them. I can imagine with them. I can do all these things. But then something happens when they switch into this, go into your dad's boys mode. Like, now we have to prepare you to be what's going to come for when you're adults. You have to start preparing to be a good person. So you're not a dirtbag. So you're not, I have a hard time with that. And so I wonder if the grumpy all the time, that's just me personally. I'm just thinking that, ladies, I don't know, maybe that's you, maybe that's not. That for me is a hard thing that I am intentional about, that I see myself doing. And I just can't get out of it. I can't shake it for some reason.
Yeah.
And I want to.
Well, I would ask you, so I'm putting my therapist hat on now, yes, and there's this thing called generalized anxiety disorder, right? And it's a thing, right? It's like, oh, I have anxiety, but it's an actual diagnosis. I've done it hundreds of times with clients. And some of the symptoms of that are like super duper small. Like, okay, general irritability more often than not. Inability to concentrate more often than not. Just like there's 4 qualifiers, and I think all you have to do is like have 1 or 2 for like a set amount of time, right? So I would ask you and your listeners too, like, okay, if you do have resting bitch face, if you do have, you're just grumpy, it's like, take a minute and go, oh, how many tabs do you have open in your browser? Because I know that's, guys have it too, but ladies, you got a lot going on, and that's fine. You work, you have kids, you this, house responsibility, all that stuff. And sometimes it's hard, and I'm saying this, sometimes it's hard for Melanie to turn that off. And especially having, we're entrepreneurs and businesses and stuff like that, it's hard for her to turn that off, right? So just like if I'm thinking about all these other things, it's like, oh, Melanie might say, you seem distant. You seem like we never talk. I'm like, well, if you knew what was in my brain and all these other responsibilities, yeah, you would understand. So I would ask the ladies to do an audit of that. What around here we call it, this has been for, I don't know, years. It's like, hey, Melanie, let's have a quitting time. Quitting time. It's like, we don't talk about business. We're not talking about big, huge things. We're just sitting on the couch doing whatever. Maybe playing cards or bananagrams or, watching a Netflix show or something like that. That's quitting time, right? So if you or other people can't have that quitting time and be present then I would encourage you to, not saying that everybody has anxiety. That was just an example. But sometimes this kind of low-level anxiety, because we're thinking of all this stuff, and if we're not processing that stuff appropriately, it's going to manifest itself as anxiety, as irritability, as distant, as not being able to think, just feeling like you have baby brain. Like Melanie had baby brain. There's a thing called dad brain too, because like after we have 3 kids, and like when our kids were little, I'm like, okay, I don't know what direction is up. I don't even know anything. This is crazy. It's like dad brain is a real thing too. So we do understand it to a degree. But I would just ask your ladies to just take an audit. Like, okay, do I have a quitting time? What does that even look like? Can I turn my brain off? Am I too anxious to turn my brain off? What do I need to do? Go get a massage, go, I don't know, listen to classical music or do whatever it is, take a bath, and like build that into your routine. And then eventually it will be easier to turn it off and have a quitting time. And you're like, yeah, okay, this is important. It's kind of like a Sabbath day, which I don't know, hardly anybody I know even does that. Like growing up, like Sundays in the South.
Come to
it's like,
Utah.
oh yeah, you don't. Yeah, well, yeah. Like
Sabbath day is holy here.
Good, because back home in South Carolina, we would go to church, go to grandma's to eat, and then basically do nothing all day. That was the day of rest, and sometimes a day of rest for me and Melanie is uncomfortable. It's like, well, we got to be doing something. I don't know. What are we going to do? And this and this. We don't know what to do with our hands, right? We don't know what to do with like all this pent up energy. And that's not a good thing, because over time that may manifest itself as some other, we'll call it a maladaptive reaction, depression, anxiety, some other mental health stuff, or just simply a wedge between you and your spouse. And that is not what you want. So do the audit, be willing to do the work that it takes to change that stuff as well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to take so much of your time, because I could seriously go through these, because you're you, and I'm like, I'm going to get everything out of this guy. Yeah. My biggest question, I think, over all of them, remember, let me see. So we had our grumpy, then remember everything and throw it back in our face. Women, yeah, we know that we can do that. And men do it too. Men are not mind readers. We talked about that. That was good. I felt good about that. They're not mind readers. They need to know what's on our mind. Men say they want sharing, but treat us with. I think we did a couple of these really well. And so I do want to encompass it all into this question. Mm-hmm. It's a big one. So especially where you have one spouse that is on this journey of self-improvement, self-awareness, bettering themselves, whatever, but you have the other spouse who is just not. And I can relate to it, because when Rick was reading his self-help books or business books or whatever, and he's like, this is good, you should read it. And I'm like, no, why would I need that? I don't need that. Mm-hmm. But now I'm reading them and I'm like, oh, I really did need that. That was a really good book, right? Mm-hmm. And it opened my mind up. But before I was not receptive of it. But so I can see now how hard that is for relationships where one person is doing all the work, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you do when that happens? I don't know all the scenarios of everything going on, but in a generality, if you have one person who is working on a marriage, who is working on themselves, who is genuinely trying to do this, right? But you have this other one that's just, you're like, bang, bang, bang. Like, they're not giving anything back. Where do you go?
Well, I put it into 2 different categories. So you said, Rick was reading all these self-help books and stuff, and you're like, why would I do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's the individual side of that, and I'll tell you a story. So when was it? I think it was 2020, January 2nd, 2020, right before COVID hit and all that stuff. I had been introduced to the idea of 75 Hard, right? It's a workout program. It's a mindset program,
yes,
right?
I had Emily on here.
Yes, she's awesome. We had her on, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and she was great. So you know about it, right?
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And of course, that's a very individual thing, but also it has implications like you got to do a bunch of workouts. There's time away from home. So I considered how that would impact the family too. And at first, Melanie was like, that's a big deal. Like all this stuff, you're going to be gone like an extra hour and a half of doing stuff, and plus you got to read and blah 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 and all this stuff. So she didn't know much about it, right? So I couldn't say, after a couple of days that I was doing it, it's like, oh man, you should do this. It's the best, and like shame on you for not. I can't believe it, right? I just kept on doing it, right? I kept on, and she saw it. Like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, you're looking better for one. Different mindset too, and this is kind of cool, right? So I never once said you should do this, you're stupid for not, whatever, judged her on anything. So what happened there? It was a leading by example, right? And then, guess what? 4 weeks in, she started it. Did I even ask her once to do it? No. I'm like, if you want to know about it, I'll tell you about it. It's kind of cool. No, she saw the change and all this stuff. So that's the individual part, right? So you can create a scenario where you are inviting your spouse. You're not saying you should or you shouldn't do this or that, right? Because then the other person's going to be on defensive and like kind of feel bad that they're not growing, right? And they're going to push back on you for growing, kind of thing. So number one, make it be an invitation and just lead by example there. Now, if it's in the marriage, obviously that's not as individual, it's a marriage, you still have to create an environment where it's an invitation. So many times being a therapist, usually it's the wife that, comes in first or drags her husband kind of thing. Where was I going with that? Oh, shoot. Sorry, you might have to edit. Yeah, so leading by example. Hey, you lay out the scenario. Things are like this. We have some issues. They're kind of hard to talk about. I think it would be wise if we go talk to a professional, objective person that can help us through this. So you give the invitation to your spouse, right? Okay, fine, I'll go. I'll just sit there, but yeah, whatever. You just keep on going. You keep on going. I'm not going anymore. I love you. That's your choice. But I'm still going to continue to go because I see value in it, right? And you just keep on doing that. Now, depending on what issues this couple has, it's going to take a long time or it might take a little time, right? So it's always an invitation. It's always okay, I'm doing this. And it's not like, well, I'm going to the gym and, going to whatever. So you're like being judgy and shameful. Obviously, that never works. So cut that out. You need to do it for health, for yourself first. A healthy individual makes a healthy marriage, right? And you can be healthy even when your spouse is unhealthy and unwilling. It's really hard. We talked about this, we call it the process of differentiation. All through November, we talked a lot about family of origin and stuff like that. But then also the concept of like, how can I be content, happy, satisfied, even when my spouse is a certain kind of way? And newsflash, you can be. I'm not saying that it's super easy, but you can do that. And hopefully, if your spouse is open to it and, hearts aren't hardened or it's too bad to like, beyond repair, you can continue doing that. And your spouse will go, oh man, okay, she's right. He's right. This is a good thing. Yeah, I can see where this would be helpful. And I'd rather live that way than this way because it just sucks. So I'll go to therapy with you. Thank you for, calling the therapist or setting up or whatever. But that is man, I get that question all the time. And sometimes, unfortunately, a spouse, husband or wife is just like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care. And then, okay, you don't jump the gun and go, fine, you didn't go to therapy the first time I asked, 1 week later, I'm moving out. It's not like that. It's like, okay, what do you want from your marriage, from your partnership? What are you allowing that you will end up enduring? And then what are your boundaries around that? Like, okay, my husband's cheating and won't go to therapy to repair all this. Well, you got a decision to make. Well, my husband drinks, a 12-pack every single night and drives and is, and he won't go to therapy. Well, you got a choice to make. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, but people do have more control than they think they do.
Absolutely.
Most of the time. I would say
everything's
all the time,
a choice.
In fact.
Most things are choices. That's what I say to women when I hear them like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. My kids have all these things. We've got this. And I'm like, you're making choices. Every time you do something, you make a choice. You choose to put that on your plate. You choose to add that extra activity. You choose to spend less time with your family because you're now in the car running around all over the place. You choose to not make better grocery lists. So now you go to the grocery store 5 times a week. These are choices, right? If you're better at making your choices and setting boundaries, it's 100% boundaries too. It's funny because I knew I wanted to ask you that because it's been on my mind for a couple weeks actually. And I just barely yesterday found the episode between Trina Glines and Ryan. And they talked about marriage. And that's what he actually talked about, influence. Once I stopped putting my expectations on my partner and I just, I realized I could influence by what I was doing, by what choices I was making, instead of pushing expectations on them. And it's exactly what you said. It's leading by example. And I love it.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Absolutely. Influence over expectations. Now, it's okay to have expectations in a marriage. In fact, you should. Like, I expect Melanie not to cheat or spend $1 zillion or do something else crazy. It's like, yeah, I expect you not to do those things, right? But if I am saying, hey, January 2nd, 2023, I'm starting 75 hard. I expect you to do it too, or do some other crazy intense program because this is how we move forward, blah, blah, blah. She'll be like, wait a minute. That's for you, dude, not me. Well, but it's the right thing. Then you are the one that is causing issues, right? So, but take the approach of like, hey, I value health. I value fitness. It's good for everything and everybody in our little sphere of family. I'm going to do this for me. Is that okay? It'll be a little bit of time away from the family, but does that work for you? And then you come to a consensus around it. Hey, you don't have to do anything I'm doing, but what I am doing does have implications. Let's be on the same page. Yeah, get up early, run, before the kids or whatever, and make it work. And then it's influence. And am I okay if I complete 75 hard and she doesn't do anything and in fact gains 15 pounds? I should be okay with that because my expectation was for me to complete it, not for her to do anything different. Now, if she, if something else is going on and like, all she does is whatever and does other things that aren't healthy, I'm like, wait a minute, let's take a look at this. You don't have to do 75 hard, but this is now affecting like our family and stuff. Let's look at it. And then that goes to the like normal kind of air quote expectations of what I have for her in our marriage. And of course, she can have those same expectations. Like, okay, he's not going to, sleep until 12 p.m. every single day and, spend all our money and not work. Like, no, those are normal expectations. Those are healthy expectations. So, yeah, dialing that in and understanding influence over expectations, that goes such a long way.
When you were just saying that, something else came to my head. What about, okay, so this is really, I promise I'm trying to wrap it up. What if, I just keep getting these people that I'm like, what if in the scenario that you have these expectations when you go into this marriage that I'm going to assume were communicated. However, now down the line, they are not what they were like. He's at work and she's a stay at home. She does all the home stuff. She's domestic. He goes to work, whatever. And then, but now she's like, no, you need to cook now. Now you need to clean now. I want to maybe go to work now. What happens when that becomes such an issue? Like, I don't know how to ask it nice. Like, what happens when that starts falling apart? When you go into a marriage thinking one thing, and that's great. Mm-hmm. Here we go. But then down the line, you change the game up. I mean, you do. This person changes the game up a little bit, and maybe they didn't understand completely what the understanding was, or maybe they're just totally changing the game up. But now there's just constant fights over territory. You do this. I shouldn't have to do all this. I've got a job. I shouldn't have to always have the kids too. Like, what do you do when those fights? Gosh, how do I ask you and make this more clear for you?
What do you do when there's conflict around? Because what you're saying really is some role reversal.
Yes, and I'm trying not to be completely obvious of who it is. That's what I'm trying to do. That's why it sounds so unwell said, is I'm trying not to be so obvious of who this is.
Okay, so I got you. So, okay, was this or what does the dialogue look like around this?
Even though we both have jobs, so now if we don't even think about that, so now if we both have jobs, what does the home look like? It should be shared, but it's not. So that's the constant battle.
Right. So you could take an approach of like, okay, let's do a time audit. Let's just look at the clock here. He works 40, she works 40. Oh, okay. But before you weren't working 40, or, maybe the wife wasn't working 40. So you could do more domestic stuff. Okay. So we have basically a shift here, so I would ask, how open is this couple to change and like, being malleable or open to change? Do we have a fixed mindset around that, or is it like, okay, things have shifted a little bit. Because honestly, if we have the same marriage we had like 5 years ago, or if you're the same person you were 1 year ago, you probably still have constant work to do. I'm different. Fundamentally, I'm, the same, like the core of like who Seth is or whatnot, stuff like that. Sure, that remains the same. But like, as far as growth mindset and like, oh man, I read this book and I learned this new thing about me and this is better than the old me, like that, we always want to be evolving in that way, right? There's what is it called? It's like, it's some crass term. It's like, then you're just chasing like the newest book or something. You read it and go, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Then, the new book from whoever comes out a week later, like, oh no, this is then you're just on a hamster wheel, right? So I would say, okay, let's look at how open both of you guys are to change. How did you come about this change? Was it talked about, or was it just like, boom, this opportunity out of nowhere came and now I'm full-fledged in this? Me and Melanie have had to make adjustments because I left all my full-time stuff. When was it? It was about 2 years ago, right? So, guess what? I'm home a lot more. We have a home studio and a home office. Well, we had those before, but like the studio is different. So I'm here much more than I used to be. Oh, okay. So I'm around the kids more. And that was a real adjustment because it's like, okay, it's not like just married Seth and Melanie here in the house at, 1:30 on a weekday when the kids are at school. It's, oh no, Seth and Melanie are business partners. They're both wearing their business hats or coach hats or whatever it is. So like the Melanie I'm looking at right now in the middle of the day, oh, that's not normal wifey Melanie. That's like coworker Melanie, same thing with her. And we had to have a real conversation around that and like, okay, get on a schedule, be super intentional. Okay, who's doing supper tonight? Kids, who's going to delegate kid chores to them to help out the family? Oh, who's picking up sis from Taekwondo? Stuff like this. Oh, who's going to vacuum? And like getting all that stuff down and being on the same page. And that stuff works because her and I have a similar shared vision, right? The shared vision is, okay, we're going to make this work for, first of all, ourselves, for the family, and for the business, and for the marriage. Obviously, that's the ourselves part. So what is the shared vision in that? Oh, okay, so I'll take on this and take on that, which I didn't do previously, but it's worth it to get to the shared vision kind of thing, right? So being really intentional around that, having open dialogue, and really sharing your expectations, right? Me and Melanie do this thing usually on the weekends because it's kind of, more laid back on the weekends. Maybe Friday night or Saturday morning, we say, hey, Melanie, Saturday, Sunday, it's the weekend. What are your expectations for the weekend? And I like, okay, for this weekend, our expectations are, and I share this, it's like, we're going to go get a Christmas tree, to this little farm thing. They have cocoa for the kids and it's all fun, right? Oh, and then after that, we'll decorate, kind of hang out, maybe have a drink, relax, sit on the couch and, just be with the kids kind of thing. That's the expectation. So as long as her and I have that shared expectation, then we can be on the same page of it. And that's just not a weekend thing. It's it's 8:30 in the morning. Hey, what's your expectation for the day? Well, I have 1 million podcasts to do today. well, wait a minute. I thought you were going to like cook supper and like clean the dishes and, take care of the kid. No, I thought you were, because you have a day off today, So it's like being really clear and setting up those expectations and being explicit in those expectations. What does that do? That weeds out and pushes out all room for ambiguity, for confusion, and for missed opportunities. Make sense?
Yeah, being very clear actually brought me back to your number 4 when you were saying when women say what they want, that they want their men to share more, and then they share and they're like, ugh. And it made me think of women don't really know what they want. That's the hardest part I'm learning in this, and I'm sure Melanie as well, is women cannot clearly state what they want. They don't even know. A lot of them don't even know. Some of them do. That's generalizing, ladies. I get it. Some of you know exactly what you want and you have no problem saying it. But a lot of women don't know. They've been handed what they think they want from society. They've been handed what they think they want. And so there they are. That's where they are. And now I'm asking them to break out of that little cage that society's built for them, right? And think. And so that's when you're saying this, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to articulate what you want. But first, you have to know what it is. You have to know in your brain and see it. And just like you could draw the picture of it perfectly. That's how clear it needs to be. That you could explain it to a 5-year-old and they would understand what you're saying. That's how clear it needs to be. Before you can even articulate this to someone else and expect them to understand what you want.
Yeah, because like nothing is worse than like the confusion of, first of all, it sucks and it creates discord in your own mind, like not knowing what you want, and then expecting your partner to fulfill that need, but then they don't. And then that has, its own issues that go with that. So Melanie's really good at telling me what she wants. So she's not one of those ladies. She really knows what she wants. It's kind of the opposite for me. I'm like, well, I wish you would know what I wanted because, So I had to do the own work of like, oh, wait a minute. This is also my life. It's my marriage. It's my family, just as much as it is Melanie's. What do I want in that? Let's talk about that. Hey, Melanie, what are the top 5 things you basically want from life, marriage, whatever? Okay, here's the list. Seth, what do you want? Okay, here's my list. There's going to be some overlap, which that helps create the shared vision, right? So I can say, hey, I want to hunt deer and elk 30 days out of the year, in Colorado or Utah or somewhere. That's not really on Melanie's list, right? And that's okay. But, guess what is on my list? Travel with family. Awesome new experiences with family. Great communication. Great sex life. Doing things and creating things together, like our business, like our coaching, like the podcast. That's all in the shared vision. So, it's really just, honestly, it's super simple. It just boils down to intense clarity and intentionality around this. And also, I would add in there flexibility around expectations, sprinkled in with growth mindset. And that's the formula. Right.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Took way too much of your time. I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate our conversation. That was awesome. It was exactly what I hoped for this episode. I know it's going to be falling on some serious, it might be holding up some mirrors. Not going to lie. And I hope so.
Okay, that's good.
I hope so. I really do. I'm all for the mirrors, because how do we get better? You have to know what's wrong first.
Right. Oftentimes there's a couple of different sayings in psychology and stuff, but the easy version is like, oftentimes our triggers are exactly where we need to grow. If we're offended at this or this hurt or that hurt, or why can't they just do those are areas that you need to grow. So take those as like, kind of like, not even a warning sign, just like a bell dinging. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, Seth, work on this. Hey, that thing, you got weirded out about or offended or butthurt. Oh, wait a minute. Look at yourself first before you look at Melanie or other people, what they're doing or not doing. How can you respond to that? Look into that. Look into the mirror. And oftentimes that is where we will find the answers.
Hey, will you just wrap it up and let them know everywhere they can go find you guys?
Yeah. So thank you, first of all, for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
I love what you're doing. It's a very important work. And if your listeners want to know more about what we got going on, you can go to anatomyofus.com, Anatomy of Us on Instagram, Facebook, all the socials. Also TikTok. We're recently on TikTok. And if you have any questions, just shoot me an email, Seth@anatomyofus.com. We love conversations. Shoot us a DM. And any way that we can help. This is making it a mission to go first, right? To lead the way, to have these conversations so other people can go, oh, wait a minute. That sounds pretty normal. Yeah, okay. I'm not crazy. I can do this too. And that's our goal.
I absolutely appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Seth.
Thank you, Gina.